Hi everyone, my name is Caitriona Jordan. Thanks for joining this lunchtime session delivered by BEST, Built Environment Smarter Transformation, on our Passivhaus Practical and why you need hands-on practical training webinar. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully everyone can bear with me because I have a bit of a cold today. So hopefully you can all see that okay. So we'll have this short webinar and it's in partnership with BEST, Coaction and also the Passivhaus Trust. So joining me today we have Rupert Daly from Coaction Training. So Rupert is an architect, a Passivhaus designer and also a Coaction trainer and works with John Gilbert Architects as a practitioner. We also have Kate Forbes from the Passivhaus Trust, and Kate is also a Passivhaus designer, retrofit coordinator and an education and operations manager at the Passivhaus Trust. So we're delighted to have them this lunchtime to support the webinar. Just a quick short agenda. We will have time at the end for Q&A, so please put your questions into the chat box and we will spend that time going through that. But first of all, we've got myself, just a little really short overview of why the industry needs Passivhaus practical training. Rupert will then go on to discuss the impact of the training and what you'll learn and how it's being delivered. And then Kate will cover why this course is endorsed by the Passivhaus Trust and how it aligns to the Passivhaus standard. So looking forward to those discussions, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. I'm just going to play a short video, so hopefully this will work. If you just please bear with me.
This course is a Passivhaus practical course that BEST have developed in partnership with Coaction. They discovered that there was a bit of a practical gap in terms of application between people that were coming out the end as a qualified designer or tradesperson and their actual on-site experience. So what they've tried to do is plug the gap to allow people to accelerate that learning, to come to us and spend the day with us to better understand how much the sequencing impacts and how they should design detailing that is easier to build, and they understand the sequencing at that stage so that they get less problems on passive houses on site.
So if we're going to mitigate climate change, then we really need to make sure that we're upskilling the industry. This training's here really to provide that valuable transition between design and construction. The idea that's been set up on this training is that we can amalgamate designers and contractors, have them in the same place, that we can actually engage in discussion, understand where design impacts on buildability, essentially develop an understanding of designing for buildability. But how do we communicate that? So the best way to do that is to get hands-on physical activities, and really facility here at BEST allows us to actually bring those teams together.
And hopefully that worked well, and it gives you a bit of an insight into the training and where it's located and the activity that happens within it. So just a little bit of background to the project. We've been delivering training in low carbon since 2021, and the training has actually evolved as we've really noticed the requirement of skills that are required and how we've been able to adapt the program. So we originally we looked at Passivhaus training regs, and we've really focused on air tightness, but we know that this has given a bit of awareness, but it's not really hitting some critical points that the industry need to upskill. We then collaborated with Coaction and we developed this course in partnership together. So Rupert and Kate will go into more detail and also you know, how they're instrumental to the programme. But really, when we think about the Passivhaus Practical training, as you could see in the video, it's really about collaboration, breaking down silos, working together, understanding the key benefits of practical training. We know that the industry is moving away from one-off passive house projects, and you know, low carbon, low energy and high performing buildings are kind of critical to everyone within the built environment. Obviously to certain levels of degrees and extent. We have, you know, local authorities, housing associations, developers, public and private commissioners specifying passive house or working on passive house low energy, high performance principles for new build and retrofit. So the demand is definitely grown, and there's a need to ensure that the upskilling is taking place as well. The Passivhaus practical skills really close that gap between theory and real construction. It's the intermediary between both of those activities, and the Passivhaus Practical is a one-day course that addresses a whole range of activities, from installing air tightness membranes, identifying thermal bridges, the insulation requirements, building with confidence, competency, and really reducing mistakes and learning in a safe environment where you can make mistakes. The programme is really you know, addressing all needs. So for example, tier 1s, tier 2 contractors, architects, consultants, tradespeople, and also we're really starting to ready itself for the legislation into whatever the Passive House Scottish equivalency will be. I'm going to now hand over to the team to discuss in more detail some of the aspects of this programme. So I'm going to hand over to Rupert. Thanks for joining us, Rupert, today.
Thanks, Caitriona. Hi everyone. I'm Rupert Daly, I'm a Coaction trainer. My background experience in construction's over 20 years, but I've been focusing on fabric first efficiency now for more than 10 years. The importance of this training, I think, especially at this time, we need to transition from what looks good on paper to actual physical reality. So next slide, please, Caitriona. Thanks. So what does that look like, and why should you attend? Well, if you've done any of the theory courses, or if you're new to it, what we're used to in the industry is designing things to a particular standard, whether it's SAP or Passive House. And in theory, that works well. You know, we can see that in the modelling or in the paper as being effective. What we need to do is actually transition that to reality. So what this course is trying to do is look at that point between pre-construction and construction, and see how we can actually make sure that the design intent is translated into construction reality. So we're mitigating the performance gap, and what we don't want is exactly what you see on the right, where everyone thinks it's working one way, and the reality is that we're getting quite a distinct margin of additional performance loss. Okay, next slide, thanks. So I've added in this little quote here. Sorry, one last, if you can go back one there, Caitriona. Yeah, a little quote here. So it's interesting just seeing the culture of the industry, and you know, it's changing, it has to change. And we find sometimes that some of the resistance here is possibly from some of the most experienced people in the industry in terms of construction, that, you know, we're bringing in something new, we're adding another layer to the context, and that understanding that needs to actually translate from a management level down to people on the tools. So the course here gives us that option to actually move between different roles. Okay, next slide, thanks. Okay, so the benefits, who gains from this training, apart from the end building user, is really it's open to a wide range. You know, we've got on the course we've been running now for a good couple of years, we've got designers coming in who are getting more upskilled in understanding fabric first energy efficiency in buildings, and wanting to know how to translate that, what's on paper, into a quality assured building design. The contractors as well, various scales. We've got individual sole traders, we've got tier 1 contractors, we've got a middle ground where whole teams have come from a relatively small contractor, so that they're all understanding what they need to achieve. The best place for me, I think, in this is where we get engagement, where we get that conversations going. So it's great that in most of the cases we've got a selection. We've got designers and contractors bringing their own experience to the table, as well as clients in understanding, and so that we're all on the same page. And we're finding there's more interest now in companies actually using it as a team building exercise, potentially for project specific projects, but also just to help with that collaboration in the even from the early design stage, so that people have more of an understanding of what it takes to achieve this performance. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the course is structured, or the day is structured around that knowledge transfer point in the project between the develop, design, pre-construction, and getting handed over to the construction team. It's not realistic really to condense a whole construction project into a day of training. Sorry, can you go back one? Sorry. Into a day of training. So what we've developed is a series of detailed junction rigs to facilitate, first off, desktop planning and sequencing, and then the physical build, so we understand what's involved in the process. So what you see when you see a detail that comes from a design team, you know, there's a lot of information on there, but there's also other information that we need to understand that won't be explicit in that detailing. And breaking down those details, understanding how things go together, what the sequence of works would be, and how we can ensure that we get the Passivhaus principles of insulation continuity and airtightness into the mix is really important. So having those different roles comes through. So next slide. Although it's only a day, what we'll be doing is taking on different roles for short periods of time, understanding just by the actual process of the work activities and the physical build, what's involved, how we can actually achieve that quality assurance that we're looking for, and also the viewpoints of different people involved in the construction. You'll also experience the role of an attic or an air tightness and thermal integrity champion, also known as a Passivhaus champion, and in terms of how you would engage with the others in your team when we're looking at the build. Okay, next slide. Some of the outcomes then that we'll have for this is, what we find is a lot of people go away understanding how having a bit more insight if they're not in the actual construction skills part, from designing how difficult the details can actually make it to achieve the desired outcome. So we're able to reinforce the understanding of designing simplicity into the construction, so we're designing for buildability. At the opposite end of that, we're seeing how we can execute the construction to perform as per the design intent. So designing for buildability and building to perform. You're working in groups. We understand there's a requirement on all construction projects, of course, and really what we're finding is when we're actually engaging in this way, we're sharing our own experiences, and we're also embracing the culture of doing it right, and doing it once and doing it right. That's implicit in doing a quality assured project, is that we have to work together on whichever side of the contract we work on. We're essentially working as one big team, and that culture is expected in projects and becomes self-evident when everyone else is engaged in the process. A waggle is what a good one looks like. So we'll experience from our own builds. It's not a case of, I know what you mean, but we're not very good on the tools. We expect you to be able to deliver a good quality junction detail here. Interestingly, some of the people that have done the best quality of work in this course have had no experience in construction. They're entry level in colleges and have no time on tools either. So it's about actually decoupling your own mindset potentially for half a day to actually try and deliver what the key requirements are here for performance. We'll also go through the process of evidencing the actual work that's been carried out in terms of the requirements for Passivhaus, so you're getting an understanding of what's expected at a site level if you're going for Passivhaus certification, and ultimately how we achieve that quality assurance. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so a little plug for some additional training. If you're coming to the Passivhaus Practical without any experience, that's okay. We can explain a little bit of what it's about. However, there are other courses available if you want a bit more of a deep dive, online theory training in retrofit delivery, and also we have in the next slide we have contractor training, tradesperson course as well, which is certified. There is also Passivhaus designer training available, so please have a look at the links for that. And thank you. Pass you over to Kate.
Excellent, thanks Rupert. I'd like to welcome Kate to join.
Hi guys. I am Kate Forbes, now Education Manager and Ops Manager for the Passivhaus Trust, and just here today to chat you through some of the benefits that we see in the Passivhaus Practical course. If you move on, Caitriona. Thank you. So just a quick back there, the Passivhaus Trust are a not-for-profit independent organisation that provides leadership for the adoption of the Passivhaus standard and methodology within the UK. Our aim is to promote the principles of Passivhaus as a highly effective way of reducing energy use and carbon emissions from buildings within the UK, as well as providing high standards of comfort and building health, which is really important in an ever-increasing and warming climate. Next slide, please. You might have seen this quote before. It is from the founder of the Passivhaus standard, Wolfgang Weist. His background was physics, and in the 80s, when we experimented with insulating buildings, he didn't understand, and I read that the construction industry had experimented with adding insulation to new buildings, and the energy consumption had failed to reduce. This offended me, as it's counter to the basic laws of physics. I knew they must be doing something wrong, so I made it my mission to find out what, and intended to do it right. Now, what he's describing there is what we consider to be the performance gap, and that continues in typical construction today. And Passivhaus certification is a great way to avoid that performance gap, and this course is a great way to learn some of the skills to reduce that as well. Next slide, please. Passivhaus building, in terms of its function, is the right temperature both inside and outside, in winter and summer, and free from drafts, with excellent indoor air quality and a constant supply of fresh air. They're cheap to run with very low energy bills, and they are robust and well built, with ideally no performance gap in the construction. How do we do this? And this course helps you learn some of the skills into that. Next slide, please. So you will be aware of the 5 building principles, but there are 8 principles of a passive house integrated approach. The 5 building principles are common to most low energy buildings, and they are increased insulation or optimum insulation, air tightness, reduced thermal bridges, MVHR ventilation, and glazing. Now, the 3 principles of passive house that you might not be aware of are principles of approach. So they are surrounding our performance and comfort criteria, the fact that the buildings are modelled in PHPP and decisions are made based on an understanding of how the building will perform in practice, and the quality assurance through Passive House certification. So at that overview, let me tell you now how each of these principles is practiced through this one-day course. If you go on to the next slide, please. So having a performance and comfort criteria, we're all used to working to a very standard, even if it is building regulations. What the Passivhaus Practical course does is gives you first-hand experience of working through details that have been built on actual passive house buildings. Rupert brings his personal experience to the course and allows you to understand why decisions and specifications were made in the same way, in the way that they have been, and his learned experience of them. Next slide, please. The buildings, the details that we'll be working on the Passivhaus Practical are from real life buildings that have been modelled and constructed, but have been modelled in PHPP, which gives you a practical experience of how you would manage the substitutions on site, and challenges details how you would understand the impact of site substitutions on the PHPP modelling, and gives you a bit of a process as to how to deal with that. So some of the site expectation on substitutions of materials. Next slide, please. The quality assurance of having Passive House certification is the key thing that helps close the performance gap in passive houses. And the PH Practical course gives you the opportunity to practice working through a detailed project in a small scale, but gives you practice taking appropriate records and photos of the build process that you would require for Passive House certification. So it starts getting the team thinking in that way, that how would we go through this process and what experience we need, both from a time and resource point of view, to enable that. Next slide, please. So high performing insulation is probably not a surprise to you, and is one of those that building fabric moments that is common to low energy buildings. Within a passive house that's been built, modelled in PHPP, the insulation is optimised, so not too much, not too little, trying to get that sweet spot that you get maximum performance and optimised cost. Through the Passivhaus Practical course, BEST covers a wide range of installations and gives you first-hand experience of cutting and installing and any of the associated challenges of each. It looks at the sequencing and the installation order and how the different approaches can impact on that installation continuity. So supercharge that learning so that you can do that in one day with a real range of experiences. It's great for people who are either working on site or specifying to have a real in-depth knowledge of these materials. The same is true when it comes to air tightness. The Passivhaus Practical course offers a range of air tightness materials and the applications, allowing you to experiment with different products, ranges and their properties before you have to specify or order large amounts for your site. The course probably focuses most heavily on building fabric, although within the BEST campus there is a significant display of MVHR samples, which you can expand your knowledge there, and again that touchy-feely learning of how an MVHR system and what the implications of these things are within your passive house build. All of the details that are worked on in the course are designed to be as thermal bridge free as possible, and Rupert goes into detail around the decision-making process and why one element was used over another, and the implications of each of them and how they were modelled within a PHP. They've all been designed to minimise thermal bridging, and there's a wide range of approaches. So you get, again, that supercharged learning in a quick and concise training. The last building principle is about high performance windows, and there are a range of window samples within the BEST campus that allow you to see not only the quality and the functionality of those products, but fully understand the weight and mechanism that they are. Within one of the rigs, there's a door insulation, so you get some of the airtightness and the install details that would be similar to a window, and first-hand experience of that product quality and functionality. In terms of our endorsement, we are very happy to endorse this course. It's been a collaboration between BEST and Coaction. Coaction and BEST are both strategic partners of Passivhaus Trust. It's been authored and delivered by experienced Coaction trainers, Rupert predominantly, and he has access to a collective knowledge and experience of the full Coaction team of industry experts. The course incorporates, as such, up-to-date learning and on-site experience from the best in the business and allows you to learn from that. Before we go, one more slide, please. Before I go, a quick plug of our learning opportunities as well. Passivhaus Trust hosts an online learning platform with a huge resource of different learning opportunities, and if, as I said at the beginning, we are a membership organisation, so if you think you could benefit from some of that learning, please have a look at our membership and the other benefits of that. Thank you very much. I'll pass you over back to Caitriona.
Thanks, Kate. That was really great. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Did that work okay? So we have just before we move on to some questions, so please post your questions in the chat. The team will also upload links to signing up to the Passivhaus Practical course, which is for CITB levy payers 70% funded. So you know, if you're within that category, please, you know, make use of that funding that's available, and also we have, I think, a discount if you have 5 or more participants as well. And the course is costed at £150 per person, so it really is value for money, and the activity that you're getting out of it. What would, Rupert, I suppose a question for you. We're often asked around on the course about so sort of why should I sign up to undertake it, more from or we have interest rather from sort of maybe clients that are not necessarily in the delivery side, or other kind of people who are not on the delivery side. And would you say it would be suitable, or, you know, what would the keen interest be to be undertaking the course?
Yeah, I think the course, you don't have to be on the tools or delivering the physical construction to get the knowledge benefit from it. I mean, that is fundamental, and if we're going to upskill the whole industry, we've got to upskill everyone involved in the projects. And we find actually that the best results are when everyone has an understanding, and it means that you can all essentially speak the common language, you know, of building performance. Yep. You know, so in that regard, if you're sort of client side but quite far removed from the physical or the design specification as such, you know, you've got an inherent interest in why or how the building's going to perform, I think it's for you as well. Yeah, definitely.
Great, thanks. We've got a few questions. Someone who's not currently working on any Passivhaus projects, however, keen to undertake the training, does that matter? Do you have to have Passivhaus projects on the books?
No, I think a lot of people come on it because they're wanting to get onto Passivhaus projects, and you know, it can be a first step on that journey. It doesn't need to be Passivhaus. The fundamentals of this is about quality assurance and building performance. So the Passivhaus methodology that Kate took us through there gives us the fundamentals of the design and the third-party certification for quality assurance. As a process, it can be applied to every project just to make better buildings. So yeah, we recommend coming on it. The other thing I wanted to say is, yes, the rigs are based on real-world projects. We're not going to cover every construction, but what you'll come out of at the end of this is an understanding of what it takes to achieve good quality thermal performance, irrespective of the construction type. So the key concepts or the key principles run through all of those different constructions, and you can apply those principles to any construction following that. So if you whichever rig you end up building, you'll see that the neighboring rig, the fundamentals will be the same, even though it's a completely different construction.
And that kind of leads on to the next question, which is about, are you able to deliver a bespoke course for a project? So we have done that in the past, and we actually did that for our own retrofit project as well, which is currently just completed at the end of the summer. The supply chain were upskilled, and we tailored it to our specific construction type. I don't know, Rupert, do you have anything you would want to add to that?
I think this course directly isn't, you know, we're trying to do this so we can appeal to as many people as possible. If you're looking at sort of bespoke, where we're assessing an actual project that you've got live, that's slightly different. I think there might be opportunities within that, but it's a different. It requires more work and more input essentially to do that.
So I would suggest to follow up with us directly, and we can explore that. Also, there was one around. I'll come back to the most useful aspects of the course, but the one around. Do you need prior knowledge of Passivhaus before attending? So we recommend that there is prior knowledge, but you can also, we have online resources that you can utilise to upskill, and also Kate, I know the Trust also have some resources that they can access to upskill prior to coming to the course.
We've got a free online 6-part module, which is through our Learning Hub, that is aimed at entry level and some of the principles that I've just covered. But yeah, definitely it's our most popular course and free access through our Learning Hub, and that would give you good foundations and let you get into more of the detail on the day of the course.
Excellent, thanks Kate.
So I was just going to say as well, there is also other at Coaction as well. There are some learning modules there, as well as paid training courses. So it depends how deep a dive you want to go into this sort of community, if you like, of work. And it's also, you know, the more you know, the more understanding you have is quite important. So your takeaways from it are, right, if we're going to go down this route, you know, what's the value in what we're doing here, you know, and you'll get that in more theory. That it's not to say you won't get, you'll get a lot anyway, even if you're fairly new to this and even to the end.
So I would say there's lots of recommended available resources, so you can, you know, acquire that theory prior to coming onto the course. And there's stuff within the Coaction website, Passivhaus Trust website, and the BEST website. And I'm sure they're short and interactive as well. Also, kind of another question around what do you think is the most useful aspect of the course?
For me, I think when you come into it, even if you've got experience in construction, you know, your understanding of why it matters to actually look at these things. You know, you can see from a designer's perspective, you can draw the perfect detail, you know, and what's the reality of actual being able to build that? You know, what's the tolerances? What's the other things around that? Like what weather conditions do you have to build it in? You know, what are the actual properties of the products you need to use, and how do they actually complement what you need to achieve? And I think that's fundamental, a missing link. So this course is in those principles, primarily how do we achieve great quality insulation continuity and air tightness continuity? You know, how does that work? And I think by actually looking at design specification and physically getting hands-on with that, you begin, the penny drops in actually saying, well, these things matter. You know, you can't just assume because it's a high performance insulation it's going to work well. Quite often it doesn't. You know, it's how we join the dots essentially.
Yeah,
I think in addition,
sorry.
No, I think in addition to what Rupert's saying, the range of materials and products that Best have to hand allows you to kind of supercharge that experience, that you are able to, oh, this one or this one or this one, which really helps at specification stage, or have a better understanding whether you're actually on site or in the office, the challenges that people are having on site to deliver, and how the product selection impacts that.
Thanks, Kate. We have time for a couple more questions if you want to post anything. I was just going to ask Rupert, have you noticed, or has there been any feedback from the participants in terms of, you know, them sort of reconsidering specifications or products being specified from the from that experience of undertaking the course?
Absolutely. I think we're in an industry where we're used to using products which are high performance for maximizing the performance for the minimum thickness. That doesn't always work, you know, so there's a revisit there, but we need to think about what the installation situation is, how do we get the most out of each of those products. So we can do that, we do that through the process of the actual course. What Kate was saying there as well on the variety of products that are there, and I think it's one of the questions that's there as well in terms of the insights into different materials and their application. We can talk through that through the actual training and also the other rigs that Best has. You know, we've got very good examples explaining what works and what doesn't.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't think there is any further questions. I don't know if Kate or Rupert, do you have anything you would like to add before we kind of round things off?
And I think it's just a fantastic opportunity. I know, having not that long ago done my designer course, that being able to go through this one as well and really learn that hands-on aspect, I think there's a real value, and it's just a day and it's really well priced.
Thank you. I totally agree. Rupert, do you have anything you'd like to finish on?
Look forward to seeing you there, basically. It gives me an opportunity to just blather about what I like and what I think, you know, download some of the information I've gained over a number of years in domestic and non-domestic constructions.
Brilliant, thanks Rupert. We will share all the links from all three organisations with you afterwards. Please reach out to us as well. You can reach out to myself if you have any further questions, specifically if you're looking for some specific training, and we will support as much as we can. Just a massive thanks for Rupert and Kate for to join us, and the sun's shining directly in my eyes, so hopefully everyone managed to get out and have a nice lunchtime walk. But thank you everyone for taking the time to join us this lunchtime.